This is CBC Here and Now.
I won't say that you don't get affected when people call you really terrible things on Twitter, but, I know it's not true.
Tonight, Here and Now sits down with Dr. Janice Fitzgerald as the province marks 2 more deaths from COVID-19.
A relatively mild day today across the province, or at least parts of the province. More mild air moving in through the week, and eventually we'll see a cool down.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes. Those stories in just a moment, but first, Team Gushue has its first game and first win under its belt, defeating Denmark 10-5 this morning in Beijing.
Oh. Boy.
Nice job. Game day. Good job, Brad. Yeah.
Well, it looked dicey in the 6th end, but Canada took control in the 8th, scoring 3 to end the game. Gushue told CBC he was feeling the nerves at first. They hadn't been on the ice for 5 days, but those feelings soon settled.
Today felt like a normal big event like the Brier or the Worlds or whatever, the first game, so that's nice. I remember 16 years ago I couldn't sleep. I could barely feel myself out on the ice, but it wasn't that bad today. It was just a little bit of jitters, a little bit of stress about not knowing the ice and being completely confident where to put the broom, but that'll come as we play a couple games and get a better feel out here.
Well, a lot has changed in the 16 years since Gushue took home Olympic gold in Torino. The skip is now an entrepreneur, a husband, and father of 2. And while he's representing Canada in Beijing, his biggest supporters are here at home, cheering him on from their unofficial headquarters. Here Now's Jeremy Eaton has that story.
Red and white filled the Gushue family home this morning, watching Team Canada take on Denmark in the opener of Olympic curling. Front and center, 2 of Team Gushue's biggest fans, his daughters Haley and Marissa.
It was really cool because back a couple years ago, I barely understood curling, so I would never really watch it too much.
That it is 6 for Canada.
Back in 2006, things looked a bit different. More blonde in the hair, some different teammates, but an outcome that has become part of Team Gushue's legacy. A moment in Newfoundland and Labrador history that these 3 still hear lots about, often from strangers on the street.
And basically tell us where they were at that Olympic gold final. That's what we always hear. I was at a friend's house. We had the day off, and I think they were kind of a little iffy on why are people coming up to us? I was like, it's my dad. I don't understand what the big deal is.
Mom, answer the phone.
But punching a ticket back to the Olympic Games takes years and a lot of support from back home. Krista got to experience the rush of the 2006 Games in Italy, but this year, COVID canceled any notion of having family in the stands.
They were quite disappointed because that was kind of always the push, I think, for Brad to try and go to the Olympics, because especially our kids have gotten older. Haley's 14, Marissa's 10. So they understand the game. They watch the game.
The extended Gushue family is making the most of the once or twice in a lifetime opportunity. One that's a little nerve-wracking for some of the Gushues.
Kind of surprised that I wasn't, because I usually am a bit nervous, but I wasn't today.
She's usually more calming than what I am.
Yeah.
I'm the one probably pacing and hiding in the bathroom. It's a good place to hide.
Or the garage.
2022 here in Beijing.
Not only are they watching, but they also have to adjust to the 11.5-hour time difference to Beijing.
We're going to wake up and we're going to watch the whole thing.
Is it important for you, Haley, to watch all of the events?
Yeah, I want to watch every single game.
And after today's win, a chance to speak to Dad.
He was eating ice cream when he was calling us.
Post-game treat.
While Team Gushue would rather have their families in the stands, just getting to see Dad represent Canada is a treat enough for the other 3 members of Team Gushue. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
saw a quick winter storm last night. The highlight from that was the winds. Let's take a look at the top wind speeds from after midnight last night. Winds rather, 154 kilometers per hour in the Rec House area. But before midnight, we saw a wind speed of 161 kilometers per hour. So there's a look at that area of low pressure there. In behind that, not a whole lot happening, but we do have some milder air moving in, particularly for Lab West. Take a look at the trend over the next 5 days, that roller coaster, and you can visually see that as we head through tomorrow afternoon, some of that milder air, and then eventually that cold air will move in, only affecting parts of Labrador, though it looks like a mild week for the island. I'll have the details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, another grim milestone today. 2 more people in the province have died because of COVID-19, bringing the total number of COVID-19 deaths up to 50. The 2 deaths today are women in their 80s, one in the eastern region and the other in central. Public Health says there are 20 people in hospital, 7 in critical care. There are also 250 new cases since yesterday. And there are some changes to visitor restrictions at care facilities in the province. Starting tomorrow, each resident will be allowed 2 visitors. Well, a new report from Statistics Canada gives this province an ominous distinction. Since 2016, each province and territory in the country saw growth in its population, except us. Newfoundland and Labrador is the only place that saw a population decline, a 1.8% decrease.
The real, long-term trend is a drop in fertility rates. Women of childbearing age are having fewer children, and that's a worldwide trend. We used to have the highest fertility rate in Canada. Now we have the lowest. Last I saw, we'll find out with the new census data. And so, we need immigration. We need return migration and new migrants from elsewhere in Canada. But the overall trend is really hard to reverse.
The province has hit the brakes on a controversial proposal to build a plant in Lewisporte that would import waste and process it into energy. This morning, government said it would not approve its construction. Here Now's Chrissy Holmes reports.
After a detailed review of the project submission, as well as the feedback received, the provincial government has determined that the Lewisporte Waste to Energy project is not to proceed.
A government news release was sent out early, and the minister made himself available just an hour later. Davis says in the course of government review, 2 issues with the project came up. The first being the importation of garbage to Newfoundland and Labrador from Europe for final disposal.
In which our province, this contravenes a long-standing government policy. Additionally, the proposed area is not zoned to allow an industrial project of this nature.
There have been growing concerns around the company's final disposal plan. Opponents were planning a rally against the project this Saturday. Their message, as outlined in an online petition, was echoed by Davis today.
Our province is not a dumping ground for garbage from other countries, nor will it ever become one.
Recently, we spoke with Synergy CEO Keith Hulbert and asked him to respond to some of the concerns laid out by critics. What is your response to people who fear that your facility will mess the place up?
Yeah, the connotation that this would be trash coming in is not accurate. What we're bringing in is actually a fuel source, plastic, wood, and cardboard.
Hulbert says those materials still contain a lot of energy, and if not converted to something useful, they would naturally convert to methane in a landfill.
So converting it back to a fuel or renewable energy source achieves a lot of the greenhouse gas and the COP26 objectives.
They were proposing to bring in 800,000 tons of waste to this province. That's twice as much as we create as a province. The byproduct that was going to be left after was going to be over 90,000 tons of ash. That's more than we would actually put in central waste management.
The company included its plan for what to do with the 90,000 tons of ash. They plan to load it on the empty container ships and send it back to the UK for a cement company to use it. We requested an updated interview with the company. They say today's news came as a total surprise, and right now they're evaluating how they want to move forward. And it's possible this story isn't over yet. Chrissy Holmes, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, 3 airports on the island will split $1 million in funding from the province. The Premier and several cabinet ministers gathered at the Deer Lake Airport this morning to make the announcement. The money will be shared between St. John's, Gander, and Deer Lake, the only airports to apply. The province says the money will help re-establish routes that were cancelled or reduced over the past 2 years.
We recognize that coming out of the pandemic that they will need this extra bit of support. But we've heard everybody's heard for a long time that critical routes, essential routes, are one of the rate limiting steps in terms of driving our tourism industry. So as disruptive as this pandemic has been, it can also be a time of opportunity to look for ways to accelerate some of those routes. And an investment like today is important in establishing them.
Well, a new tradition was started at the Central Fire Station in St. John's today. It's called a push-in ceremony. 2 new fire engines were blessed and then pushed back into the station. The ceremony dates back to the 1800s when horses were used to pull firefighting equipment. The horses had a hard time backing up, so firefighters would have to push gear back into the station themselves. The 2 trucks being replaced today will be moved into the station's reserve fleet.
Quiet weather this story tomorrow. Also some pretty mild temperatures. How long are they going to stick around?
This weather update is brought to you by the NL 511 app. Know before you go. Check road conditions, highway cameras, and the provincial plow tracker with the NL 511 app.
Ashley, it was pretty windy this morning, but really mild temperatures. How are things looking out there now?
Yeah, those winds have died down quite a bit from what we saw earlier today. They're still a bit breezy though. Let's take a look at where we're sitting now. As that area of low pressure moves, the winds are shifting, and that's why we're starting to see these temperatures drop as well. But current wind gusts right now about 48 kilometers per hour in St. John's. Still seeing some gusty winds for Cartwright. Same thing for Wreckhouse and then Port aux Basques as well, somewhere in the between 72 and 74 kilometer per hour wind gusts. So there's a look at that area of low pressure there. Not a whole lot of precipitation associated with it anymore. That's since moved off. But as we head through the next couple of hours, we're going to see those temperatures drop. And this is what we saw earlier today, 7 degrees in St. John's, 2 in Deer Lake, and then still seeing some of that mild air up across Labrador as well. Lab City saw a high near -6. Now your temperature is sitting there right now, but you can see the temperatures across the island are starting to drop and will continue to drop as we head through the night. We're currently sitting somewhere between 0 and -1, or 2, I guess, and -1 across the board, and still looking at the chance of a few showers and or flurries for the next couple of hours, but the sky should actually clear out tonight for most of us, and then up across Labrador, still looking at that potential for a few flurries as we get into the early morning hours. Temperatures tonight will be hovering somewhere between -1, -7, and winds will be out of the northwest or west, still gusting as high as 60 kilometers per hour, and then that mild air, at least -single-digit air, still sticking around for Labrador as well. Cartwright -8 and Lab City going down to -9 tonight, with the -teens expected through Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and Nain. Now, as we head through the day tomorrow, it looks absolutely beautiful for the most part. Sunshine, can't rule out the chance of a few flurries though on the west coast, same thing for the south, and you will eventually see your clouds on the increase, and then the chance of some flurries across Labrador. Some sun in the mix as well, but overall these mild temperatures are going to continue for you. And then as we head through the evening hours, the better chance of seeing those flurries for the southern areas of the island, as well as the Burin Peninsula, and then the Avalon through the overnight as well. Now temperatures tomorrow, beautiful. 0, well, -1 to about 2 or 3 degrees through the day. The winds will stay a bit brisk in the morning for the east, out of the west, and then dropping as the day goes on. And then for the west coast, nice for you as well. Those winds out of the south though, about 20 kilometers per hour. And then there's those mild temperatures again for Labrador. -3 will be the afternoon high tomorrow for Lab City, with those winds generally out of the south or southwest. Now the potential flurries overnight Thursday into Friday morning for the majority of Labrador, and then either showers or flurries, the story for the island, with rain in the evening hours for the Avalon. Temperatures again above 0, 2 to 5 degrees, and then dipping for Lab City down to -16. But this mild trend will continue at least through Sunday. Monday looks like we could see some snow. That's when the next system moves in. However, there is a chance we could see some mixing for the eastern portion of the island. For central and western Newfoundland, your temperatures will stay well below 0, so it does look like a snow event for you on Monday. And then some snow to bookend both Sunday and Monday. For eastern Labrador, temperatures will dip back down into the -double digits. Sunshine and -20s for western Labrador. Take a look at this shot. Calm day in Cavendish. Thank you, Wayne, for that. If you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
A lot of people are still trying to wrap their heads around how Newfoundland and Labrador went from keeping COVID out to routinely dealing with hundreds of cases a day. Others are frustrated and angry at the public health measures still in place almost 2 years after they started. So how is Dr. Janice Fitzgerald navigating through it all? Tonight, we have the first in a two-part sit-down interview with Here and Now's Peter Cowan.
I want to go back to December. At what point did you realize that Omicron was going to have to change a lot, if not everything, about the way we treated this virus?
Yeah, I think very quickly, I think we realized that we were going to have to think differently about Omicron. You know, we didn't have a whole lot of time to get a lot of information about Omicron before it was here, unlike some of the other variants that had surfaced. So. But I think certainly over the Christmas break, we realized that we would have to change our tactics with regard to contact tracing. And very soon after that, I think we all realized that, you know, it was going to have to be something that we dealt with differently than we've dealt with any of the COVID that we've had before.
Throughout the pandemic, this province has had very good control of the disease. We've been tracking down almost every case. We've been finding their contacts. We've been getting them isolated. And in fact, you know, we've been the envy of the rest of the country on many of these respects. How hard was it to sort of take your hands off the reins and say, you know what, we can't control it anymore?
I think it took a fair bit of, you know, shifting really for us to think about that. But just the sheer numbers alone, I guess, made us realize that that's the way that it had to be. But it is difficult moving to that place. But I think we're seeing, and the evidence is showing, and our experience with Omicron is showing that it's starting to behave more and more like some of the other respiratory viruses that we see circulating in the winter months. And I think, you know, it's going to require an approach very similar to that. So right now we're just working through that. You know, we've had, when it comes to things like flu or other respiratory illnesses like RSV, for example, we've had it around for many, many, many years. And so we know how to deal with it. This transition period sort of is helping us to figure out how we deal with that and what we have to do exactly.
If, though, we had closed our borders back in, say, mid to early December, like we did in 2020, if we had locked down, if we'd really reduced contacts, was there not a world under which we could have kept Omicron from coming into the province in the same way we largely kept out most of the other variants?
No, this is just, it spreads so easily that, you know, it was going to come in. And if we locked down, whenever we opened, we were going to see you know, a surge in cases. So it's certainly, you know, when we have diseases like this is why we say, like with influenza, that lockdowns don't tend to work as well, because it is contagious and very easily contagious. And so, you know, it can spread before anyone even knows that they're sick, of course. And so it is much more difficult to keep it out. You know, we can't lock down the province completely. Most of our food is imported. Most of our you know, other necessities are imported, and so that has to continue to happen. People leave the province for work and have to come back. That was going to have to continue to happen. So, you know, with what we were seeing elsewhere and the spread that we were seeing elsewhere, there was really no way to realistically stop it from coming into the province.
Early on in the pandemic, you received a lot of praise for how you were handling the situation. You know, I noticed behind you there, you have some of those dolls and other, you know, various arts and crafts that have shown up. Recently, some of the public discourse, and I think the key word here is some, has been much more negative towards public health. People have taken out their frustrations on people like yourself who have brought in these measures. How much does that affect you?
I mean, that's expected, isn't it? I mean, we know that these measures are having impacts on people. We know that people are upset by that. We know that there's this fatigue that is happening, that people are tired and people are frustrated. So we understand that. And I think, you know, none of us are really immune to that criticism. But you know, you try not to pay attention to it for the most part. I mean, there's not much you can do about it. People are entitled to their opinions, and that's so you just have to build a bridge, I guess.
But I guess as someone who didn't pick a career in the public spotlight, by and large, you know, public health has, until this pandemic, has been largely behind the scenes. Is that something that was easy to do, to just sort of put up that wall and not let it affect you?
You know, you learn as time goes on. I won't say that you don't get affected when people call you really terrible things on Twitter, but you know it's not true, so that's fine. It's really, you know, about having your own internal understanding of your own self-worth, and that's really important. So you know, I think for the most part, it's just something you learn as you go.
Nice personal moment there. So how does the province learn to live with COVID when people are still dying? Tomorrow night, we'll have the second part in Peter's conversation with the Chief Medical Officer of Health. We'll find out why individuals will have to make more of their own decisions about keeping themselves safe. Well, that's about all the time we have tonight. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us. Hope you can join us again tomorrow. And just a reminder, Here and Now will remain a 30-minute show starting at 7:30 Island time for the duration of the Olympics. We'll return to a 1-hour show at our regular 6 o'clock time slot on February 21st. And for curling fans, Team Gushue's next game is tomorrow against Norway. Well, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Good night.